The Acolyte has achieved something very few pieces of media ever does. It has become a leader in its field, a true groundbreaking revolutionary. Unfortunately for Disney, it's not quite in the direction that they had perhaps hoped, as what it is leading the field in is being one of the single worst pieces of entertainment ever produced. With a 14% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes now. Oh boy, 14%. Holy shit. I mean, a lot of people have pointed out that that is a lot worse than the Christmas special at 20%, but perhaps more directly, let's compare this to the thing that really started hammering Star Wars to begin with, right? The Phantom Menace. 59%, 52% critic scores. And here's the thing. The Phantom Menace, in my opinion, was more than anything so a victim of the era it was released in. Previous to this era, we had the everything is awesome era, because everything was kind of awesome, and so unbridled optimism and cheer for anything and everything coming out was largely warranted. A new Donkey Kong game? It's gonna be good. A new Mario game? It's gonna be good. Shiny's coming out? Yay, sacrifice, etc., etc. Everyone was pretty much overjoyed at anything and everything that came out. This was then followed on, obviously, by the exact opposite. Hey, everything you know and loved, it actually kind of sucks, because being contrarian was probably the best way to get attention. And The Phantom Menace was a little bit of a victim for this, in all due honesty, but people realized that the best way to stand out amongst the ever-growing crowd of reviewers was probably to drag it through the dirt just a little bit. And did it deserve parts of it? Oh god, absolutely. Child actors, midichlorians. Oh yeah, the weird love romance between the literal child. That's like I said, The Phantom Menace is hardly perfect, but I will argue, and quite convincingly so considering this audience score, that George Lucas's long-term plans to redeem the prequels by selling Star Wars to Disney is working out absolutely fucking flawlessly. But more so than merely laughing at the audience score for The Acolyte, I kind of wanted to talk about the absolute and complete lack of any sort of positive narratives around it. So the only thing I've really found of coverage about The Acolyte that is at least sort of kind of positive is the accusations of review bombing, right? That's about it. The Acolyte is being review bombed, you see. It's being unfairly lambasted by hordes of angry people on the internet. And to be fair, there was a thing here where, was it this chick? One of the actors said that it was the purpose to make white men uncomfortable. This was from an entirely different project in 2008. Now, I've seen this before in Star Wars, where people on Twitter decide to take take events vastly out of context and then place them opposite a currently releasing thing and then not giving the context. This was also the, I think this was in relation to Ahsoka, I think it was, where one of the producers or writers said that the goal of the movie was to make men uncomfortable, and what she was talking about was a documentary about rape culture in Pakistan. I was like, okay, you know what? In that context, making men uncomfortable is probably okay. So I am not a fan of this. The right wing is beginning to take on board far too many tactics of the left wing for my preference, but a little bit out there. The thing is, however, that The Acolyte absolutely deserves its score, as even the people who are pro it doesn't really have much in the way of an argument. Like Variety, a review, preview sort of kind of thing that came out before the show even aired. These are people that obviously have access to Disney and has access to the new stuff. Therefore, they are not going to say anything negative for fear of losing access to the new stuff. And what was their greatest praise of the show? Well, you see, the two new sisters are echoing Luke and Leia. Okay. That's an Olympian stretch. What's the connection? Well, they were separated as young children. Oh yeah, no, dead ringers, absolutely, no difference between them at all. And as for, there's a Darth Vader in this show. Alright, Why? Well, there's a villain who wears a mask and speaks with a distorted voice. Holy shit. If you've got to bury down this deep, if you've got to disassemble to this point, yeah, it's probably pretty terrible. And a lot of the pro-Acolyte defense comes in large part from this article here, from Forbes and Paul Tassi. The Acolyte's 15% audience score is embarrassing for the audience scorers. I heartily disagree. This is the closest thing the Acolyte has come to a positive narrative, essentially going, oh, it's not that the show is actually terrible, it's that those evil chuds on the internet are abusing the show. And you know what? Maybe they are. And maybe that's a good thing. This is what I said about in the previous video, why the Acolyte is an example of positive and effective gatekeeping. The culture has turned. Because here's the thing. If you're, and I believe Paul Tassi would agree with me in characterizing it this way, if your ideological opposition, your political opposition, has the power to dump a setting like Star Wars, one of the biggest, most popular settings in human history, barring perhaps the Bible, to a 15% positive score, I would be rather worried, as I would feel somewhat outnumbered and absolutely and utterly crushingly defeated in the currently ongoing cultural conflict. But hey, details. Let's read some of this. While Star Wars has had many controversies in the Disney era, has it had anything but? Viewers have now mobilized their fleet of TIE bombers to obliterate the user score of the Acolyte wherever possible, namely on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. I previously reported that this started up right at release, as the Acolyte quickly became the lowest audience Star Wars project beside the infamous holiday special, which you can say a lot of mean things about, but at least it was Star Wars. Now its former 33% score has dipped below the special's 20% score and is all the way down to 15%. Teehee. At a certain point, this is just absurd, and it says a lot more about the viewers than it does the quality of the show itself, which has barely even got started now, just 3 episodes in. It's an 8-episode show. It's pretty much halfway done. Paul, come on, my dude. Come on. If you can't tell if a show is going to be good or bad after watching half of it, are you sure you deserve your job? No, I'm not going to entertain the debate. This is not review bombing. A 15% score is barely more than a third of the last most controversial Disney Star Wars project, The Last Jedi. Nothing is even close except that holiday special on IMDb. It is even easier to see a full 54% of all reviews are at 1 star, giving it a 3.6 out of 10. There's also how fast this happened. For instance, Ahsoka only has 5,000 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes after being out for months, while The Acolyte has aired 3 episodes in 2 weeks and has 10,000 reviews in it. The last season of The Mandalorian only has 2,500 reviews, the beloved Andor 5,000 reviews total years later. Oh yeah, no, it's review bombing, don't get me wrong. But here's the thing, the question then is whether or not review bombings are justifiable and moral. Yes and yes. Again, we are waging a conflict here over the ideological substance of Star Wars and culture in general. The creators of The Acolyte have mentioned again and again and again that this is not a show for the white man. This is, what was it Kathleen Kennedy said? Representation is not for everybody, making clear, no, it's the gayest Star Wars show ever. And featuring a coven of lesbian space witches, I can see it. Having not a single male character in the show beyond the Wookiee and the guy who offs himself immediately. Yeah, you've spent the last 10 years telling us about how representation matters and how if you can't see yourself on screen, well, you clearly can't enjoy it. Well, we took your advice. Rotten Tomatoes has previously tried to curb review bombing in the wake of what would happen with Captain Marvel's release, verifying people had watched the movie before reviewing. But there has been no way to enforce such a system with TV, so here we are. And again, there shouldn't be. A review bomb does not appear out of nowhere. It is not a, spontaneous thing. Organizing, what is that? Let's see, 10,000 reviews in the last Mandalorian. Okay. 10,000 reviews. Organizing 10,000 people to go review bomb something is very, very goddamn difficult. It's extraordinarily difficult. It's hard enough to get people to click the like button on a YouTube video, okay? Making them go to a different site, leaving a review, leaving a score, leaving a bit of text explaining why is actually rather hard. This is why, if people are willing to go through the effort of doing so, their opinions should be noted. Why is this happening? Let me guess, Paul. Racism. There are a bunch of dimensions to this, and none of them good. There is absolutely a racial and gender composition to this. A clip from Sarah Amelia Sandberg about making white people cry was shared tens of thousands of times online, taken out of context from an interview years earlier about a film, The Hate You Give. Showrunner Leslye Headland has starred in many YouTube thumbnails lambasting the woke nature of the series, but is also allegedly breaking canon. Now, again, I actually agree with this. I do not think we should stoop to the left's tactics on this level, particularly as The Acolyte is plenty bad to be berated on its own quality, and Leslye Headland. Leslye Headland is an explicitly woke individual who hired her own lesbian wife to play a role in the show. She is absolutely woke. And as for it allegedly breaking canon, it does. Because as far as I can understand, the entire reason why Anakin was created was after Darth Plagueis messed with the Force. Anakin was created by the Force as a reaction to this, as a very, 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 very rare, in fact, singular event. Now that this has been done not once, not as a singular unique event, but twice by a coven of random lesbian space witches, is ridiculous. This is the main reason for the surge since episode 3 aired, where fans believe the show has broken canon and destroyed the lore of Anakin Skywalker by implying that, like Anakin, the twins are virgin Force births. Anakin was conceived purely through the Force alone, part of this chosen one mythology, and now they say that's happened again, ruining everything. See, that is part of it, yes, and it does break canon, yes, but that is not the reason for the review bombing. The reason for the review bombing is because people are sick of your ideology. That's why. Honestly, in this case, the canon conflicts are a secondary concern. People didn't decide to, as you say, right, 10,000 people right after release. They didn't review bomb it because they were like, oh, the canon conflicts in the first 2 episodes. No, they simply hate your ideology now. That's it. It's that simple. They hate your wokest nonsense, and they will smack you if they see it. We have finally arrived at the point where your politics have just become actual unironic poison. And thank God we have. The problem is we simply have no idea if that is true. Blah, 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 blah. I don't even care anymore. There is also pushback about the portrayal of the Jedi, not great, acting as space cops, rounding up Force-sensitive kids to test and train. Not by abducting them per se, but, luring them away from their families for their own good. Which is what happened to Osha and sparked the events that led to the death of her family and community. Sparked the events is an extraordinarily uncharitable way of describing the fact that her sister decided to attempt to burn her to death in her room because she was threatening to leave her cult. The Jedi are not the bad guys here, and you need to be rather ideologically conquered to think so. Of course, the concept of the Jedi as rulers has dealt with this topic many times over the years. Most famously in the prequels, where the arrogant, clueless Jedi Council actions, or lack thereof, directly led to the Imperial takeover of the galaxy. Oh yeah, sure. The 15% score is embarrassing, not for the show, but for those review bombing it to be frankly laughable degree. I'm not even the Acolyte's biggest fan, as the first 2 episodes I didn't love, though I thought episode 3 was more interesting. You are a weird person. But the worst Star Wars project by an order of magnitude in the history of the series, and it just so happens to be the most staring black woman, the whole situation is a parody of the modern toxic fanbase of the series, and if you want to disguise it as being upset about canon, then it shows a distinct lack of understanding of both material of the Shadow and the wider universe. Oh, I think you just demonstrate that. And again, no, it's not the canon. And it isn't racism either, nor is it sexism or misogyny. It is because you tell us you created this show with these characters for an ideological reason. We have the person in charge of it going, this is for ideological reasons. I did this because of my politics. This is the inclusive show I hired based on race and ethnicity, and we are saying we don't like it. That is it. We are objecting to the wokest ideology enforced into it. And the canon conflicts, You know, it's Disney Star Wars. It wouldn't be a Disney Star Wars show if it didn't somehow ruin something in the previously established lore. That's simply just an expected path of the course at this point. Like the Rings of Power. One could criticize the Rings of Power for many, many reasons, including acting and writing, and the fact that it also makes the elves addicted to mithril, you know, just sprinkles on top at that point, frankly. Because, hey, was it on? Oh, yes. But in canon, then it shows this. You can critique show, but overwhelmingly, that is not just what is happening here, and it goes well beyond that. While we have seen many things like this happen in Star Wars fandom over the years, I can't help but feel like it's absolutely getting worse. Correct. Absolutely. This is what I said in my This is a successful example of gatekeeping video. You have finally got the woke people realizing that they are losing this conflict. They have woken up one morning and they have seen people manage to review bomb a show to this degree, and they are, holy shit. We were the minority all along. Yes, you were. This is what the Acolyte stands for, okay? The Acolyte demonstrates to everyone with the eyes to see that you have lost this culture war. It has taken a very long time. You have grabbed a tremendous amount of power in the process, but at the end of the day, this conflict, like every other political conflict, is 2% arguing over the attention of the 98%. And the 98 has sided thoroughly with our side, because our side made, in the end, the better argument. We made the better examples. We can point to a show and go, okay, the show writer says this show is deliberately racist, deliberately diverse, and that representation is not for you, white man. How do you feel about this? And, well, apparently 85% of people do not feel very nicely about it, Paul. If I were you, I'd start pivoting to a different ideology as quickly as humanly possible, unless you are actually, dedicated to this, in which case, at least you have the benefit of having the courage, that's the word I was looking for, I was about to say guile, the courage of your convictions, which will place you quite some significant distance above quite a few of your compatriots. Nevertheless, this is fantastic. And I don't even care about it being a review bomb. Review bombing are legitimate tools in the arsenal of those whose entertainment is being ruined. What was that saying? A protest is the language of the oppressed? Well, consider this my language. 14%. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.